Hey, Yukong here with a guide on Yukong, the newest 4-star unit to come to Star Rail. She has great potential, but is probably one of the trickiest units to use. We will talk about why and how to use her effectively though. Her damage buffing and self-damage make her a great harmony sub DPS, so if you haven't pulled on Watcher, a free Yukong in 1.2 may be nice to build. We will go through her stats, abilities, traces and Eidolons, and then her pros and her cons. Then we will discuss her two playstyles and their best relics and lightcones, and finish with synergies and team comps. Let's begin. So Yukong is a 4-star imaginary unit that follows the Harmony path, which is a path dedicated to buffing allies. At level 80 she has a base HP of 916, a base attack of 599, and a base defense of 374. She's a high base speed of 107. She has a high energy cost of 130 or 100% if you count her bushy tail and fox ears. This puts her in the bottom 6 for base HP and bottom 6 for base defense, and her attack is average. She is however the 5th fastest unit in the game, but then her energy cost is one of the highest in the game. So her stats are pretty worrying, and she has similar tanking stats as Ting Yun, who we know is very squishy. Now for her abilities, which can be tricky to understand, here is how they work. Her basic attack, Arrow Slinger, will deal a standard amount of imaginary damage to a single enemy, dealing 30 toughness damage, regenerating 20 energy, and 1 skill point. Her skill, Emboldening Salvo, is a buffing skill. She will target herself, not allies, and obtain 2 stacks of Roaring Bowstrings. That has a cap of 2 stacks. When it's active, the attack of all allies is increased by a percentage, 80% at level 10, or just under 2 attack percent main stats. Every time an ally turn ends, she will lose 1 stack of this buff, and the turn she takes when using this skill will not remove a stack, so basically the next 2 allies after her will gain this buff and then it will wear off at the end of the second ally's turn. Just like Asta, this is dependent on a specific turn condition rather than counting on a specific ally's turn. So you can have the buff and spam all your DPS ultimates and they'll still benefit from the buff, even if they won't have the buff when their turn starts. This skill will regenerate 30 energy and consume 1 skill point. Her ultimate Diving Kestrel is a buffing and damage skill. If her Roaring Bowstrings is active when used, so you usually want to skill into ultimate, then Roaring Bowstrings will additionally increase all allies crit rate and crit damage on top of the attack percent buff. This is the first crit rate buff from Harmony units, and at level 10 it will increase crit rate by 28% and crit damage by 65%. This crit damage buff is a stronger boost than a well invested Bronya. This buff will be applied at the start of the ultimate, and so her damaging part, which will deal up to 380% of her attack to a single enemy, will also be buffed by her attack percent, crit rate and crit damage. This will deal 90 toughness damage and refund 5 energy. Her talent, 7 layers 1 arrow, is an enhanced type talent. It will enhance her basics. Once every 2 basics, she will deal up to 80% of her attack as additional damage, and double the toughness damage of said attack. So if you basic every other turn, every basic will now deal 180% of her attack and deal 60 toughness damage. Very cool. Her technique, Chasing the Wind, is an enhanced type technique, but a little different from normal ones. You will need to stay on her for this buff or she will use it. So use any buffing techniques before her, and you can't use an attacking one after her because you have to attack with Yukong. When using it, she will be faster than any character in the overworld, which is nice, and then when you enter a battle after attacking an enemy with her, you'll gain 2 stacks of her Roaring Bowstrings buff immediately, which allows her to get her buff up at the start of the fight. Since this isn't from her skill, if she takes the first turn, then her turn will consume a stack, so only the ally after her will get this buff, and is another reason why I promote slow Yukong. If you're the fastest, the buff is half useless if you run 2 DPS with her, or if your DPS is 3rd in the action order. Let's check out her traces now. Her first Ascension passive will let her resist 1 debuff once and trigger again in 2 turns after this resist. This is pretty decent since desyncing your turn order is bad for supports, and losing a turn of buffs sucks too. If you're running slow Yukong though, the CC won't be an issue unless you're in Clara teams, but resisting dots is still nice to survive. Her second Ascension passive will increase imaginary damage by 12% for all allies when she is alive and in the team. This is a nice bonus, but doesn't mean she's restricted to mono imaginary at all. Is about a 9% damage boost when considering Planar Sphere. Her final one will give her 2 additional energy every time an ally takes an action during her Roaring Bowstrings buff up time. So this includes her own skill when she uses Roaring Bowstrings, and it includes any ultimates, and it even includes her ultimate if you have the bowstrings up when you use her ultimate. So her skill will now give 32 energy and her ult will give 7 energy. This also includes multiple skill uses such as Xing Shui or weird turn mechanics such as Syl's Resurgence. Follow-ups and counters do not trigger this. It's a bit tricky and should only be considered as quality of life. Her rotation will need some procs of this, but since she can trigger it from herself, from her ultimate, and her skill, we're pretty good on that. She gains attack percent, imaginary damage percent, and health percent as her trace bonuses. Imaginary and attack percent are great for sub DPS damage, and health percent is great to help her low defensive base stats. I would recommend for a full supporting Yukong to only level skill and ultimate. For sub DPS, talent and basics can dish a bunch of damage. Let's review her Eidolons, which are actually pretty unneeded. She performs just fine at E0, comparing to her performance at E6. Her first will grant a 10% team-wide speed buff for 2 turns at the start of the battle. It's okay for faster first waves in Memory of Chaos, but doesn't have much use after that. Her second will make her regenerate an additional 5 energy whenever an ally reaches their max energy. This counts if an ally starts with max energy too. It happens 1 time per ally and resets when she ults. It's a nice quality of life, but doesn't create any new rotation as far as I know. Her fourth will make her do 30% more damage when her buff is active, so this only takes practice when she skills into ultimate, as allies will take up her buffs. It's an okay Eidolon. Her final one will grant a stack of roaring bowstrings when she uses her ultimate. This means she can ultimate before an ally takes their action, and gets both the skill's 80% attack and the ultimate's 28% crit rate and 65% crit damage. Now this sounds great, and it is, but her stacks can't go to 3 with this, and you're already tuning your DPS to her skill and ultimate. In a normal state, her buffs will go into your DPS and another unit, and they'll get the full buffs. So if you don't ult, you will lose your crit buffs, but if you ult, you don't gain any extra stacks. The way this E6 benefits the team is if you have a 2 harmony setup, or someone in front of your DPS, and use your skill before the next unit, who's first in line to buff your hypercarry. After they take your turn, you can ult on Yukong and still have your DPS and anyone following after to get this big buff. This also means, for example, if you mess up your rotation and do a basic, you can ultimate before your DPS and they'll still get that big buffing turn. So what are her pros and cons? Her buffs are a pro. For the turn of her ultimate buff, her damage increases unlike any other unit. Her sub DPS damage is another pro. She dishes out a ton without giving up too much, thanks to her own buffs which benefit herself. Her toughness damage is a pro as well. We have a toughness damage of 210 in a 4-turn skill point neutral rotation. And if going for a 3-turn rotation, a toughness damage of 150 in 3 turns. Mastery Break does little damage, but the Imprison effect is great and scales with Break effect. We also have good energy gains, even if they're a bit funky. This means she shouldn't have issues getting her ultimate back if you have an energy rope. CC immunity is great too and helps fix an issue supports have. Finally, her Eidolons are unneeded, and E6 only brings quality of life or new situations. For her cons, we have the most annoying buff in the game to manage. I have my slow Yukong patented build that helps with this, but still. Any ally that cuts in before your DPS can potentially ruin Yukong's buffs, and any CC on a DPS ruins this too until the speed syncs back up. This is also why E6 can be nice to avoid this issue in some cases. We also have low base stats. She's just as squishy as Tingyun, who we all know and love or hate for being the character with the most deaths in the game. Some defensive substats are recommended even when going sub DPS. Finally, you'll need A6 for her rotations, so that level 70 is needed unless you're banking on RNG energy. So for her build, we're going to go through her rotation types, playstyles, and types of build, as it's kind of a big mess. So first you choose between 2 rotation types. We have 2 recommended ones. You either go skill point neutral if you want to conserve skill points and still have a lot of buffs, or skill point negative if you have skill points out the wazoo and want to have skill uptime. Skill point neutral will result in a rotation of basic skill into ultimate. Skill point negative will be skill into skill into ultimate and requires an energy rope, A6 and cogs or memories. Or it will be 3 skills into ultimate without cogs or memories. Next you have the 2 playstyles which determine her main stats and substats. You can go full spot Yukong, which means you build defensive main stats and you don't look for crit stats. And you usually spam skill or at least go for a 2 skills 1 basic rotation. The other playstyle is Sub DPS Yukong and you aim for damage percent, attack percent and crit in main stats and substats. If you go attack percent or break effect rope, you'll need mesh and cogs or memories of the past. Then we have 2 build paths that determine her speed. They work on either playstyle. You go fast Yukong and Musketeer and try your best to speed tune to be in front of your DPS, even though a lot of DPS will get speed buffs or self speed buffs. or you go my slow Yukong build with 4-piece musketeer being a bit risky, and it would be better to combo a 2-piece where you put no speed boots on her. And since teams naturally are geared towards building speed boots on everyone, Yukong will be last and buff the next 2 allies regardless of any speed tuning. Fast Yukong can be safer if your DPS gets CC'd, but requires so much speed and substats. Slow Yukong is the safest apart from that, and any CC on Yukong won't affect the playstyle unless your DPS is Lightning McQueen. For DPS that build attack percent boots optimally, they will still be faster, barring Clara, who can only use slow Yukong anyway, as she will take 1 turn of the bowstrings buff, but the extra turn remains for every action until the next ally's turn, so every counter performed by Clara will gain a huge boost in damage. So you can mix and match depending on what you want. You can go sub DPS, SP neutral, fast Yukong, or you can go support, SP negative, slow Yukong for example. She's a very interesting unit and has a lot of different varieties. For light cones you go energy rope and any supportive light cone, or meshing cogs or memories with an attack or break rope. Supports veer towards the first and sub DPS veers towards the second. Supportive cones include Carve the Moon, Planetary Rendezvous for Modern or Imaginary, or Dance Dance Dance. Past and future requires speed tuning on fast Yukong, or a slow Yukong as long as the DPS takes action first after Yukong. But the battle isn't over, works the same, but you don't gain the skill point as she doesn't ult an ally. For Synergies we have Luocha and Well as part of the Imaginary Trio. She buffs Luocha's healing and Welt's DPS if you run him as a carry, and Welt carry is honestly not bad. She gives him free attack percent, crit rate and crit damage, and imaginary damage percent, especially when using Planetary Rendezvous. Lots of imprisonment will be happening and lots of damage too. Luocha, Welt, Yukong and Silver Wolf, or another flex, if you're running into Imaginary Week already, is an amazing team. My favourite synergy for Yukong is Clara. 1.1 is really Clara's patch, with Silver Wolf enabling monophysical, and Luocha and Yukong being luxury new partners for her. Clara adores slow Yukong as she will have an 80% attack boost and then the potential 20 crit rate and 65 crit damage on every single counter. With Luocha, this also gives the whole squad healing every single counter. Luocha, Yukong, Tingyun and Clara as a hyper carry is an awesome team. Just be warned of no March aggro modifier. Finally, she buffs dual DPS setups really well. A main DPS and a sub DPS can abuse the 2 turns of bowstrings, and then you can bring a solo sustain as the final unit. Bronya and Tingyun can't buff 2 allies as much as Yukong can. Sub DPS include Danheng A6, and Arlan is good options as they are SP neutral or SP positive in Arlan's case when he uses basics. Note that Danheng doesn't get talent activations from Yukong's buffs. If we get SP efficient sub DPS in the future, teams with them will love Yukong in some cases, because you'll have 2 main DPS worth of damage being buffed by Yukong. Anyway, that's all for Yukong. If you liked and learned something, then like and consider subscribing. Thank you to all my members, Aku Rome, Neophyte, Natha, Hold the Soul, Polybius and Wintermoon very much. I appreciate you very much, as well as all of the little helpers. Thank you very much. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a Guoba day.